A new skyline. Focus question. How has New York City's skyline changed? Introduction. What would Paris be without the Eiffel Tower or Dubai without its Burj Khalifa Tower? Famous structures such as these, along with the rounded buildings, create a line against the sky, called the skyline. Skylines identify places just as their fingerprints identify you. Unlike fingerprints, however, skylines don't stay the same forever, they change. Manhattan in New York City is an example of a place whose skyline has seen both slow and rapid change. In recent years, New York's skyline has changed dramatically. Buildings and structures have risen, fallen, and risen again. Growing the Big Apple. New York City was first settled in the 17th century. During the 19th century, its population exploded. The end of the Civil War brought formerly enslaved people north in search of work. Immigrants of Ireland, Poland, and Italy came later. Many of them made New York City's Manhattan Island their home. By the late 1800s, New York has the most densely populated city in the country. By 1925, it was the most densely populated city in the world. People needed places to live, work, and shop. The city grew northward as more stores, factories, and homes were built. However, Manhattan Island is only about 23 square miles, 59.6 square kilometer in area. Soon there was nowhere left to build. The only place to grow was up. To do that, the front building's method had to be used. Old methods had always used walls to support a building's weight. The walls on the ground floor had to be strong enough to support the floors and roof above them. These requirements limited a building's height. There was no practical way to make walls thick and strong enough to support a building with many floors. A new method involved using a steel frame instead of walls to support the structure. Huge steel beams were connected to form the building's skeleton. Then the walls were hung from the beams and attacked at the bottom to the floor. The walls of the building's upper floors did not weigh heavily on the lower floor's walls. The steel frame beams held them up. Steel frame construction made it possible for buildings to reach new heights. By the turn of the 20th century, New York City was home to many huge structures called skyscrapers. Soon skyscrapers were going to one after another as builders and architects competed to make the world's tallest building. Buildings of the New York City skyline. 1899, Park Row Building, 391 feet, 119 meters, 29 stories. 1908, Singer Building, 612 feet, 186.5 meters, 37 stories. 1909, MetLife Tower, 700 feet, 213 meters, 50 stories. 1915, Woolworth Building, 792 feet, 241 meters, 55 stories. 1930, Chancellor Building, 1,048 feet, 319 meters, 77 stories. 1931, Empire State Building, 1,454 feet, 443 meters, 103 stories. 1970, World Trade Center, 1,727 feet, 526 meters, North Tower, 110 stories. 2014, One World Trade Center, 1,776 feet, 541 meters, 104 stories. Building skyscrapers. In 1928, the builder of the 77-story Chancellor Building wanted to make it the world's tallest. The builder attacked a tall spire onto the top of his structure. In 1930, the Chrysler Building became the world's tallest structure. It also became the only building to stand taller than 1,000 feet, 505 meters, 305 meters. The Chrysler Building's region would not last. Just blocks away, a giant was rising. The Empire State Building was soon the world's tallest and would become also a famous New York City landmark. Workers began construction on the Empire State Building in January 1930. More than 3,000 workers finished construction just 410 days later. The steel and granite building had 103 floors and stood over 1,400 feet, 427 meters tall. The building had 64 working elevators. It took less than 1 minute to get to the 80th floor. People could visit an outside observation desk on the 86th floor or an island inside deck on the 102nd floor. The Empire State Building was a symbol of New York City and was featured in many books and movies. It was the world's tallest building for nearly 40 years until twin giants rose from Lower Manhattan. Twin giants rise and fall. After the Empire State Building was completed, skyscraper construction slowed. Giant structures cost a lot to build, and the American economy was not doing well. It was 1970 before the city's skyline grew higher. In the 1960s, city officials decided to build a center for international commerce in Lower Manhattan. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey was in charge of these new World Trade Center. Architect Minoru Yamasaki, a Detroit-born Japanese-American, designed the buildings. He proposed twin towers as part of a multi-building complex. A Port Authority. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey is an organization formed in 1921. Its purpose is to develop and operate trade and transportation facilities in both New Jersey and New York City. The Port Authority still owns and manages much of the 16 acre 64,750 square miles World Trade Center complex. The 110-story towers would include some structural innovations. One was the use of tube frame construction. Each tower was similar to a hollow square pipe. Along the outside walls of the building were columns spaced close together. This reduced the need for inside support columns and created more usable floor space inside. Another innovation was the use of sky lobbies. Skyscrapers need many elevators. Yamasaki proposed an elevator system modeled after the city's subway system. The towers had both express and local elevators, just as the subway had express and local trains. Who was Elisa Otis? How were people supposed to reach the top floors of the skyscraper? Climbing hundreds of stairs wasn't a good option. Elevators were needed. Early elevators, however, weren't as safe as they should have been. Thanks to Elisa Otis, this problem was fixed. Otis designed the first safety elevator in 1854. The elevator's platform would fall only a few inches into the cable holding it broke. He also designed engines to power the elevator. Without a doubt, Otis's invention was necessary to the development of tall buildings. The next time you are in an elevator, there's a good chance you'll see the name Otis somewhere inside. People could take an express elevator straight to a sky lobby on the 44th floor. Then they'd transfer to a local elevator that would stop at every floor above to get to their offices. This system was an efficient way to transport people vertically. It reduced the number of elevator shafts needed. Construction began in 1966 and took 4 years. The North Tower was completed in December 1970. It stood 1,727 feet, 526 meters, tall at the tip of its spire. A restaurant atop the building called Windows on the World offers diners a breathtaking view. The South Tower, reaching 1,362 feet, 515 meters high, was finished 7 months later. Beneath both buildings was a parking garage. Below that were railroad and subway stations. The Twin Towers were a striking addition to the city's skyline. For 30 years, the World Trade Center towers were the tallest buildings in New York. Then disaster struck. On the morning of September 11, 2001, hijackers flew 2 passenger jets into the tower. Within an hour after the attack, the South Tower began to fall and crumble to the ground. The North Tower soon followed. New workers watched in disbelief as these enormous structures was reduced to heaps of burning rubble. Nearly 3,000 people died as a result of the attack. A new tower rises from the ashes. The World Trade Center tragedy was devastating. New Yorkers mourned the loss of their neighbors and their landmark. They voted to rebuild the World Trade Center. Excavating the ruins of the old towers took time. Plans for the site took years to develop. There were many construction ideas and strong options about what should be built on the site. Finally, the Port Authority unveiled the design to the new World Trade Center complex. One area was set aside as a memorial park for those who had lost their lives that day. The site of the original buildings are now pools with contain items from the old towers. Nearby, a new 104-story tower has been constructed. Nicknamed the Freedom Tower, the structure rises an astonishing 1,776 feet, 541 meters. The building's height symbolizes the years of the United States independence from British rule. At the top is a lighted spire that is visible for miles. Several other high-rise buildings are being constructed at the site as well. A new memorial and museum have also been built. New York's ever-changing skyline will reflect the spirit of a city that continues to adapt and grow.